Well, I'd like to say good evening to everyone. I'm feeling better this evening than I have the last couple of evenings, and started getting sick there Sunday night. And I was telling somebody I would probably give Daryl a run for his money singing bass the last couple of days. And today, when I come home, Patsy could almost do it too now. So. Well, if mine lasts very long, I'm with the doctor and let him take care of it. But we're still in the book of Matthew. Matthew chapter 19 tonight. We'll go as long as my voice will hold up. So, no, I'm not going to go that long. I come home yesterday and I felt so bad. And I told Patsy I was going to go lay down and take a nap. She said, well, she'd already cooked early because she knew I'd been sick. She said, go ahead and eat before you go. So it was before 6 o'clock. I laid down. About 9 o'clock, I had to force myself to get up. Took a shower and everything. I told her, I said, I think I'm going back to bed. And I sat up for maybe 45 minutes and read this a little bit. And I went to bed and I didn't get up till this morning. So, but Jesus, of course, he's been teaching quite a bit here and of forgiveness and stuff. The last chapter was, but he goes on and says, and it came to pass that when Jesus had finished these sayings, he departed from Galilee and came into the coast of Judea beyond Jordan. And this is an area that a couple of times you'll notice in the Bible that they talked about beyond Judea, and they really never say exactly where this is. But in the maps, if you look, it's actually Persia. Or at that time it was Persia. Now it's Iran, which was he. So he went off into this area, and it says, "And a great multitude followed him, and he healed them there. And there were Pharisees also came unto him." Now, understanding that wherever the Jewish people were, they would establish temples. And whenever there was temples, that there were those that were to take care of, and these were the Pharisees and the scribes was always at these temples to take care of the temples. So even in a far-off land, if there were Jewish people there, they would have created a temple and set it up. But it says that there was these there, the Pharisees also came unto him, tempting him. Now they were always tempting him and trying to catch him up in something so that they could have something negative to say about it. And they come into saying unto him, is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause? Now in Jesus' time, one of the biggest, there was a couple of big debates that were always going on, and one of them is the greatest of the commandments was one of them. I think we talked about it a few times in here. The other big debate at that time was on divorce. Divorce was a big topic at that time. A little different probably than today's. So we get into this topic of divorce, and as we cover here, we can see this as he goes in. It says, and he answered, saying unto them. So they're trying to catch him up into something. You see, those were very, delicate things to be talking about at that time. They were considered high points of the law. So they considered Jesus to be an uneducated person. So how in the world could somebody that would be not very educated know a lot about the law? So this is the reason they bring it up and trying to talk to him. and says, have you not read? And that is he's talking about the law here that Abraham put out. Have you not read that which he made them at the beginning, made them male and female? And he goes into this. This is actually in Genesis when they're talking about male and female. He said, made them male and female. And said, for this cause shall a man leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh. So that is pretty typically given as the God's definition of marriage, one man, one woman. And not only that, but the two become together to become one flesh. So they would leave their family. And I found it pretty interesting when I was listening to a sermon a while back. It's been some time ago now. When this preacher was asking a question of those that he was, I don't know if it's really a sermon or if he was teaching them but he asked them, what is the most important woman in your life? Is it your mother? Is it your wife? Or is it your daughter? And different ones had different thing believing and saying, and the guy that was preaching or teaching, he says it depends on what stage of life that you are in. When you are young and unmarried, your mother is the most important person in your life, because that is the one that takes care of you, that raises you up and teaches you a lot of the things that you learn. Now, once you become married and you are joined together as one and you become one flesh, and it says that you leave your father and your mother, then your wife is therefore then more important than your mother. And as you become a father and you raise daughters and they become older, then they become important to you, because you have to help teach them the proper ways of coming up. So I thought that was a pretty interesting way of putting it. Those of us that has daughters, we know that how those are, especially they seem to wrap us dads around their fingers, and we pretty much do whatever they want, don't we? But he is giving a definition of what God created and set up to be husband and wife. But he goes on to say, therefore there are no more twain, but are one flesh. That therefore God have joined together, let no man put asunder. So that is what God has created. It's fundamental in our beliefs that you become one. But then they go on and they said unto him, why did Moses, who became along after Abraham, then commanded to give a writing of divorce and to put her away? That's the follow-up question they had, of why did Moses command that? Isn't it something? God commanded them to do a certain thing, and they're asking, well, why then did Moses then command it? Why did Moses command it? See, that's in Deuteronomy. There is one of the things that Moses wrote out about divorce. It says that Moses wrote it out, that he permitted it, but nowhere did it say that God permitted it. What was happening was men was divorcing their wives, or putting them away, or sending them away and doing away with them whenever they pretty much just got bored with it. Or they found something that they liked that was younger or prettier.
Surely they wouldn't get bored with it.
Oh, no, they wouldn't do that. They don't do that today either. So they was just sending their wives away. So Moses wrote in there and made it to the point that we're making it a little bit harder. Don't just divorce them or leave them. But if you're going to do it, at least give them something to them in writing, that the men to the women. See, the women had no rights in either thing. They couldn't divorce the husband. It just wasn't permitted in those times. If she left her husband and was with another man, then that would be occasion for her to be stoned to death. So, at least if they gave them the women something in writing, if they found another man that would marry them, then they would have something in writing saying it was legal for them to do so. So here is the difference: is it is something that man permitted. God did not intend that to be that way. God never anywhere did he say that it was all right for a divorce. But what did he mean here? Is the writing of divorce was what I was talking about, for that. So Jesus goes in here in verse 8, and he saith unto them, Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, suffered you to put away your wives. But from the beginning, it was not so. So Moses probably didn't want for that to happen. Moses had one wife, only, and that was Sarah. And so we see this, that it was because of the hardness of the heart of those around him. It was because of the sin that was crept into the lives of those that followed after God. And really, I don't think they were following after God. They were Jewish people. They were God's chosen people. But they believed that was turning their hearts away from him and hardening other hearts, that they were doing it anyway. So Moses said, if you're going to do it, give them a letter or written permission that at least they could find somebody else. So it was never intended for it to be an option. He says, and I say unto you, whosoever shall put away his wife, except it be for fornication, and shall marry another, committeth adultery. And whosoever marrieth her which is put away, doth commit adultery. See, it was never part of God's plan to have a divorce.
And more than all this, they kill them, get rid of them. That's what they do.
Well, one of the worst things that I think our legal system ever allowed was for a no-fault divorce.
Probably just like Moses, people whine around so much about it, and they just went ahead and said, yeah,
And that was what my thinking was on it. You see, it used to be pretty hard to get a divorce. You had to go before a judge. The judge had to do all this stuff about whose fault, and it was a pretty drawn out situation. And I think because of divorce rates and everything happening, and people's hearts was getting hardened against God, and they complained and murmured about it so much that they just made it easier. And when you make something easy, then it happens more. It's too easy to get a divorce. It's too easy for people to just, instead of sticking together, hey, trust me, any couple that's been together as long as Patsy and I have, and some of the rest of you have problems. Everybody has problems in their marriage. You learn to work them out. It takes a lot of grace and forgiveness.
Yeah, it's not a 98.2%, it's 50-50. You got to talk to them. Communication is how you stay together. If you don't communicate, you ain't going to stay together.
Yeah, it's so those are the things you work out. But here it is, Jesus teaching that they've heard it said that if you put your wife away, he said, except for fornication. He at least has thrown a stipulation in there. You can't get rid of one just because you want to get rid of one. There needs to be some kind of issue going on. What I can understand, and I have been around people that's done this, I can't understand people that claims the name of Christ, that goes to church. How in the world can couples that are Christians or claim the name of to be Christians get divorces? it's baffling to me. Now, I've been around some of them. I've heard both sides of those issues. Some people, I mean, they have their own reasoning. To me, there wasn't very good reasonings. Something that you couldn't work out at some point. But it's just easier to call it quits and just go your own separate ways.
Jed, she burnt my biscuits 2 mornings in a row.
Yeah. That's what always gets me is how in the world can you justify and claim to be Christians? And it's hard. I understand it's a hard situation, but I would think that there's always underlying issues most of the time in any fights. I can remember the biggest fight and argument that Patsy and I got into. It was because I was supposed to take the garbage out and I didn't, and I thought she was supposed to take it out and she said she wasn't, and we got in an argument over that. One of the biggest arguments and fights we got into that went on for days. Now, the only problem with that is, and I probably told you guys about this, our family, we'll get in arguments with it. Me and my brothers and her dad and whoever it is, we will get in an argument, we'll yell at each other, and then 2 minutes after that, we're over it and we're done, we're moving on. We done had our say. I don't hold grudges against people. We don't do that. But I've known people that will argue and then they'll remember it and hold a grudge the rest of their life against somebody. Why not say your say, whatever it is that you're fighting about and you're arguing about, you disagreement about, say it and get it out of the way and go, well, Patsy's family's not like that. So that fight went on a little longer than it probably should have, but that was not the issue. There was other issues that was in there. You know, a lot of us, when we first get married, there's financial issues. I had moved to Louisiana and I was away from my family, first time I'd been away from them, and there's a lot of different stress and things over when we first got married, and that the trash was just the thing that caused it to boil over. But the reason I'm saying all that is we worked it out.
Now you take the trash out.
Now I take the trash out all the time.
What's the second word that you did?
Yeah.
Word that you trash.
That's when we played that quite a bit, pouted high, but that's the thing is you learn to compromise, and you learn it as you go through life. But so many people just wants to give up, throw their hands in the air, and call quits and just move on because they think the next one they get is going to be better than the one they got. And I remember telling the guy where a guy told me that he had a friend he got him a new girlfriend, and he was just going on about how great she was and how much better it was than his first wife and everything on. And my friend looked at him and said, "Do you know that she was married once before too?" "Oh yeah, but that's a whole deal." He said, "Yeah, but you know there's somebody in this world hates her just about as much as you do your ex-wife." So that perfect one you think you got is not going to be perfect because you're going to have issues. You have to work at it, and that's what a lot of people don't do today. So it's the same thing that was going on in Jesus' time. Isn't that something?
These younger people get married, and they'll get married for a while, and they have 3 or 4 little kids. First thing you know, they're getting divorced. Then they fight. It's kids that pay for it. It's the kids.
See, and that's something to think that over 2,000 years ago, or about 2,000 years ago, the issue of divorce and marriage, it was happening then the same as it does now.
Yeah.
The same issue that they had then. But it goes on, says his disciples said unto him, if the case of a man is not so with his wife, is it not good to marry? So his disciples comes to Jesus and ask him, well, if divorce is such a problem, why should we get married at all? Right? If it's such an issue, why should we get married? Jesus said unto him, but he said unto him, all men cannot receive this saying, say they to whom it is given. For there are some eunuchs which were so born from their mother's womb, and there were some eunuchs which were made eunuchs of men, and there would be eunuchs which were made themselves eunuchs of the kingdom of heaven's sake. He that is able to receive it, let him receive it. In other words, there are some that needs to get married because it's required. You know, we need to repopulate and have people to take our place. And those that can be in a loving relationship and have that, you need to do so. There are those, though, that cannot do that. Well, it's better for them not to be married at all.
I don't think Paul was ever married.
I don't believe Paul ever was either. I think he made such statements over in his writings as well about a man that burned and they need to be married, and those that don't, then they don't need to be married. And I think that's Jesus is kind of saying here, the eunuchs, those that can abstain from sexual relationships, then they need to stay single. That is, if they're doing it for the kingdom of God. Paul was married to the kingdom of God, and that's, I believe that as well. But those that can't, they need to marry. Then they were brought to him unto little children, and that he should put his hands on them and pray, and the disciples rebuked them. But Jesus said unto them, suffer little children and forbid them not to come unto him, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. And he laid his hands on them and departed thence. If you knew that there was a great healer around, someone that could do the things that Jesus could, wouldn't you want your children blessed by him? But I could understand his disciples thinking that, boy, he's got so much to do, he's got so much going on, why bring these healthy children to him? Well, he said, suffer them not to come unto him. I believe that he was saying of a certain age that there are children that needs to come to him that understands his message, that understand. I was listening to, and I listen to a lot of these type of things when I'm at work, and I just heard this a few days ago, but I'd seen it earlier as well. This young girl come up that looked to be, she said, I believe she was 10, 11 years old, and asked the preacher that was up front, how old do you need to be saved? And he asked the young girl several questions about, do you understand who Jesus is? Yes, and all this stuff. And well, I believe the question was when did you need to be baptized? I believe was the question. So he asked several questions to her. Did she believe in all this stuff? And she did. He said, well, have you confessed your sins to him? And do you know what that means? And yes. And she talked about how Grandma had walked her through all of that. And he said, so do you believe you're saved and you're going to heaven? Oh, yeah, I believe. He said, have you been baptized? She said, no. He said, then you need to be baptized. It's no certain age. It's just to the point of when you understand all of this stuff. My grandson is 7 years old. But if you sit there and ask him about being saved, he'll tell you he's saved. And he can tell you, I've got a video of him when he was 6 years old, confessing that he's been saved, and can tell you the reasons why. I don't believe the age is important as when they have the mindset to be able to tell you that. So when do they understand it? I've had some churches believe it's 13 when they become a teenager. I think that for some people it's much earlier than that. The age of accountability. So
whenever they get the call that they know that they're lost.
I believe so too. My youngest grandson, who's 4, he's getting ready to turn 5. He has asked me a couple of different times, Papa, are you saved? Now, I don't think he quite understands, but I've told him I'm saved. And then he asked me a couple of different times, but I found it very peculiar about it. He asked me if I was rich. And I think I know why. Is it because of this next section? My daughter said that they've been teaching that in his class because he's in preschool at Elk Valley Christian. And they were talking about this passage, and I think this is probably why he was asking me that. It says in verse 16, and behold, one came, said unto him, Good master, what good thing shall I do that I may have eternal life? He's asking, what does I have to do to work my way into heaven? That's the question he asked. Doesn't that sound like what he's asking? What do I have to do to work my way into heaven? And he said unto him, Why callest thou me good? There is none good but one, and that is God. But if thou wilt enter into life, keep the commandments. Why are you calling me good? Do you know who I am? Do you recognize who I am by your studies? He saith unto him, which Jesus says, Thou shalt do no murder, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness, honor thy father and thy mother, and thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Now that's some of the commandments that is given, not all of them. But did you notice every one of those commandments they give has nothing to do with a change in a heart? You can do all those things, be a good person, and still not accept Jesus as your Savior. Now, I think if the world would go by that list and all of us did that, boy, this would be a much better world to live in. But it does not require a change of heart on any of those. Now, I think I've told y'all this before. If you would search the New Testament, out of the 10 Commandments, 9 of them are restated in the New Testament. There's one that is, one of the 10 Commandments is not restated in the New Testament. Do you know which one that is? Keep the Sabbath holy. That one is not mentioned in the New Testament. And the reason why I believe that be, and from what I read a book that talked about it, which I really didn't understand that or did not know that until I was reading about it, because Jesus says that I will give you rest. Jesus is our rest. Now, I still believe you need to have a day to rest, and I think it's important to do so, but that is the only one that's not. I had a guy that was a Seventh-day Adventist come in and tell me that we were holding church on the wrong day. I said, no, we're not. I said, go back and look in the New Testament and tell me which day is what of the 10 Commandments is not listed in the New Testament. I haven't got a chance to speak to him yet. I just want to ask him whenever I do if he did that. But here is the list that he's given this young man, and the young man saith unto him, All these things have I kept from my youth up, which I like. Like I yet. Now, Jesus can perceive, I believe, in his heart and know that I think this young man was probably very sincere in his desire. But Jesus could see, and he said, If thou shalt be perfect, go and sell what thou hast, and give to him, and give to the poor, and that which ye have treasures in heaven, and come and follow me. I believe Jesus was sincere when he asked this young man to come and follow him. I believe that's the same commandment that he has in all of us, to come and follow him.
I think that's a great statement that we all need to study out real well.
Yes.
Come follow him.
Now, the thing of it is Jesus, I believe, and God knows in our hearts, every one of us, what it is that keeps us from submitting fully to him and come and following him. For this man, it was his riches, his wealth, the prestige that he may have had. He knew that was a thing that stood between him and God. And he stated to him there, go and sell and give it to the poor, and you shall lay up treasures in heaven. Now, for each and every one of us, it's probably not money or wealth, because I don't think hardly any of us is very wealthy, and not like this young man was. But God knows each and every one of us what it is, and he may ask you to give it up to come and follow him. That's the reason why we should never put anything ahead of God. Anything that we have that we put ahead of God is an idol to us. What is your idol? And for different people, it's different things. What is it that he may ask you to give up that you may follow him? He said, but when the young man heard that saying, he went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions.
He told those disciples when he called them, he said, come follow me.
Yeah.
And they left.
They did. They put everything aside and went after him. Have we done that? Something to think about. Study it out, as John said. Then said Jesus unto his disciples. Now this is what my grandson was learning in his class. And I think this is the reason why he come and asked me if I was rich. Because he knows that I think his parents probably said that there's things they need, they can come to us, we can buy it for them. We know that they're not going to do without. So that he may get that idea. But it says, verily I say unto you, that a rich man shall hardly enter into the kingdom of heaven. And again I say unto you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of the needle than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven. Now I believe in my little 4-year-old grandson's mind that he thinks I'm rich and I may not get into heaven. Because that's what they've been studying. So I let him know pretty quickly, I'm not a rich man. But the question that the disciples had is, because it says next that when his disciples heard it, they were exceedingly amazed, saying, who then can be saved? You understand, the people in Jesus' times thought that those that was wealthy and well off was blessed by God. They thought that they were the ones that was blessed by God, and if God was blessing them to allow them to have riches, then surely they're going to get into heaven. If they can't get in, then who can get in? That's the question he asked. See, they were amazed that Jesus said it was hard for a rich man to get into heaven. Because you see, a rich man doesn't have a need for God.
A rich man spiritually. You got Christ, you're rich.
Oh, you're rich spiritually, absolutely.
Pauper down here.
Absolutely. So his disciples were asking them, who is going to get in? Then Jesus beheld them and said unto them, with man it is impossible, but with God all things are possible. You see, they thought that the rich was going to get in, and then it was harder for the poor to get in. But Jesus has been trying to tell them it's pretty much the opposite. Those that are, as he said somewhere else, the doctor didn't come to those that are healthy. Jesus didn't come down to the rich and the ones that thought they was the religious leaders and they was going to get in. He came down for those that needed him. Then answered Peter and said unto him, behold, we have forsook all, as John was just saying, and followed thee. What shall we have therefore? Boy, Peter was one I think probably gave up more than any of them. Peter was the only one that was married. Now, Richard, you come home and tell Shirley God's called me to go do something, and you stay here and I'm going to go do it. You think that's going to work very well? Probably not so much now, but when you was a lot younger, would that leave a young wife? So Peter wasn't very old, but he was married. Do you think that he would leave his wife, and he was the one that probably had the most to give up? It's easier to do things when you're single than go out and do things.
You're not understanding the temperamental of women that day and this day.
Yeah, well, but Peter asked him, we've left all, what is our reward? Pretty much what he's saying. What are we going to get out of this deal?
No life.
And Jesus said unto him, verily I say unto you, that ye which have followed me in the regeneration, when the Son of Man shall sit on his throne of his glory, sit in the throne of his glory, ye also shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Wow. And his coming, when he comes and calls his church out, you can study that over in Revelation. We have went through Revelations a couple of different times, and we have studied it out. In that time, when it talks about those that sat around, the 12 thrones that sat around, didn't they? Those that sat upon the 12 thrones, or sat around God's throne. And he said, and every one that have forsaken houses, or brethren, or sisters, or fathers, or mother, or wife, or children, or land, for my name's sake. Do you see that list of things that he mentioned there? All of those things are all important to every one of us, isn't it? All those that have forsaken those. Meaning, that you didn't let them stand in your way of following after Jesus Christ. There's nothing wrong with having mothers and fathers and husbands and wives and brothers and sisters. It's important to have those, but they're not as important as God. Shall receive 100-fold and shall inherit everlasting life. There you go, John.
What we're all looking for.
Yeah. But many that are first shall be last, and the last shall be first.
I told you this before about that. Man, I worked with someone who was a preacher. And one day his wife gave him an ultimatum, either me or the church. He followed her. And his son worked up there too. And I'm telling you what, Steve, I don't even say it cussing about the money. And it put cold chills down my back every time that I heard it.
Yeah.
Knowing that you used to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Yep. Well, I hope someone got something out of that.